Why are horror stories at night so attractive? Why are people so attracted by very scary stories about wild monsters, psychos, and refugees from hell? If we approach the issue from a scientific point of view, then psychologists believe that horror stories do not cause fear in the reader or listener, but pleasant excitement, because he understands that the action is not happening next to him and does not concern him personally. He is safe. However, the emotions and feelings of children are much more vivid, therefore, for them, horror stories at night are more interesting and more strongly embedded in memory, often staying with the person for life. The most terrible horror stories that struck us to the core come to us not only when we hear about a mystic, but also in a dark alley, when even an adult sees something terrible and otherworldly in any shape. Hide and seek in the abandoned. On July 8, 2008, the day did not set in the morning. Cloudy weather turned into a mood. There are dreams that make you feel refreshed and rested. But this one was not of that opera. For the first time in my life, I dreamed of our dead dog, a big cute Rottweiler. In a dream, I stood on the path. He pulled on my sleeve, but I did not want to leave. When I woke up, I was upset. This miracle lived for 13 years in our family, and I did not know a kinder creature. He was not just a dog, but a full member of the family, with his place on the couch and in our hearts. He died of old age about a year ago, also in the summer at the beginning of July. My friends and I, about 5 people, 2 girls, except for me, and 2 boys, rested at a dacha in Starosmykino, Samara region. We decided to climb into an abandoned camp and play hide and seek. The neglected 2-story building fit perfectly. It was convenient to hide behind broken cabinets and rusty beds piled up in a heap. At the age of 15 to 16, we already understood that it was necessary to carefully step over broken glass fragments, but we still could not figure out that it would be better not to climb into such places at all. The weather cleared up, so I left my favorite red sweater hanging on a branch. I vaguely remembered that in a dream, it seems, I was also in this red sweater, when the dog pulled on my sleeve, forcing me to leave. I hid on the 2nd floor, taking a strategic position. The room was small, but with access to a dilapidated balcony. From there, climbing a tree, you can quickly get to the ground. I heard how the driver found everyone on the 1st floor. Then he went up to the 2nd floor and went down without finding me. He managed to hide behind a ledge in the wall. But soon they heard quick, confident footsteps. An irrational feeling of anxiety gripped from head to toe. I felt with every cell of my body that I should not get caught. Jumping up to the balcony, she grabbed a branch, which crackled warningly. Dry, may break off. Dangerous, but what's behind is even more dangerous. I remember thinking back then that it was gambling. A stone turned under my foot, and a crow croaked loudly from above. My heart was pounding as if it had decided to start a serious blood marathon. I understood that someone was about to come out of the room to the balcony, that he would see me. Instinct screamed, "Do not turn around. You mustn't see who's there." Gritting her teeth, she grabbed the next branch. A crunch, and I flew down with a piece of bark in my hand. Friends got scared and immediately rushed to me. It turns out that everyone was on the street. No one had gone up to the 2nd floor in the last few minutes. The fall knocked my breath out of me. But I jumped up and said I had to get out of here. It's going to rain soon. I didn't want to talk about sudden fear. I told in detail about what happened already at the dacha. None of the guys saw strangers on the abandoned place. Only one uncertainly noticed that he seemed to have heard a dog barking. Already at home, I realized that I had left a jacket in the camp. The next day, I walked past the building. There was no forgotten thing. I did not dare to go inside. For the next 5 years, when I came home, there was a feeling that I was welcome. As if now a dog will run out of the kitchen, bark, and jump joyfully. The Rottweiler is a shepherd dog, and apparently, as the youngest, he continued to keep me from harm. That fall could have ended in anything, but I didn't hurt at all, and there wasn't a single bruise. Mystical Creak. This was in the fall of 2019. I came to visit my friend Rada and stayed overnight with her. Before going to bed, we watched TV, discussed various moments from our lives. At night, we closed the door to the room and went to bed. I was lying on the edge of the couch, and my friend was at the wall. My sleep was strong. It seemed that nothing would interrupt it until morning. And suddenly, there was a long, loud creak right in my ear. I opened my eyes and lifted my head from the pillow, looking around. The door to the room was closed. I turned to Rada and realized from her face that this terrible creaking woke my friend as well. The situation was not at all funny, as it might seem to someone. I was afraid to even move, let alone get up from the couch. The Rada was the first to rise. A little bolder, I followed her. We turned on the light in the room and opened the door. She didn't make a similar creak. Rada went into the dark corridor and turned on the lights in all the other areas of the apartment: the kitchen, bathroom, toilet, and the second room. Of course, there was no one at home. We began to check all the doors for creakiness, and for the life of me, none of them made the same terrible sound that we heard, and in general, the doors were in the same position as the night before. When we finished our inspection, we checked that the front door was locked and returned to the sofa. The clock was at 5 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep anymore, and I was afraid to close my eyes. So I turned on the TV and looked forward to the dawn. Rada was more fortunate. She continued to sleep, despite what she heard. What it was, we never found out. But in the morning, a friend said that such a creak had already sounded in her apartment. True, then it was not she who was at home, but her sister, who, frightened, packed her things and fled. In general, the Rada has a strange house. This is not the first mystical story about her apartment. That mobile phone vibrates in the wall, and no one answers. It happened in my presence. Then the light suddenly goes out, although everything is in order with the bulbs and the switch. Or maybe it's the Rada itself, because strange things haunt her all her life, no matter where she lives. Spooky Witch Gift. This creepy story happened to my grandmother Tatiana 40 years ago, but our family still often remembers how their life turned into hell for half a year. My grandmother had a friend, Lida. They have been friends since childhood. First they were classmates, and then went to work in the same factory. Lida's personal life did not work out. There were 2 husbands, but both filed for divorce, having lived with her for no more than a year. And my grandmother got married, gave birth to a daughter, and lived quite happily. Until the 9th wedding anniversary with my grandfather. Only relatives and close friends were invited to the celebration. Lida was among them. She scattered in congratulations, wishes of happiness and long life and love and harmony. She made the most expensive and best gift: imported pillows, which at that time were almost impossible to get. The anniversary passed, and a few days later inexplicable things began to happen. One day, Grandma came home from work and saw that the light was on in the bedroom. Suspecting nothing, she went to the kitchen, and after a couple of minutes she heard their bed desperately creaking in the room, as if someone was jumping on it. Grandmother Tanya called out to her grandfather, but there was no answer. And then the granny looked out the window and saw her husband walking with his daughter along the sidewalk. Realizing that someone else was in the house, Grandmother Tanya, armed with the largest kitchen knife, cautiously went to the bedroom. My heart was ready to jump out of my chest. She opened the door and peered into the dark room. The light was no longer on. Flicking the switch and looking around the bedroom, she saw only a crumpled bed. Grandmother went to the closet, but there was no one in it either. Later, discussing this terrible incident with her grandfather, the grandmother recalled that she opened the apartment door with her keys. Only her husband had a duplicate. There were no signs of breaking in, which means that someone else simply could not get in there. About a month has passed since that strange incident. Little by little, everything was forgotten. But the grandfather became not himself. Every day he became more and more irritable. His words to his grandmother were sharper. She seemed to be utterly disgusted with him. Grandfather's health began to fail, and one day he completely fell ill, unable to get out of bed. Doctors shrugged. Examinations did not show any serious diseases. Time passed. Grandfather did not get better. Exhausted, he lay for the 4th month. Grandmother looked after him as best she could, but he was constantly dissatisfied with something, and without ceasing, grumbled at her. One night, my grandmother dreamed that she was going to bed and cadaveric worms were sticking around her head. They swarm, climb into the nose, mouth, ears. Grandmother woke up in a cold sweat, looked at the pillows presented by Lida, and a guess flashed through her head. She instantly ran to the kitchen for a knife and ripped them open. Grandma was petrified with horror. The pillows were stuffed with dried chicken feet and black cloth with painted crosses. Without hesitation for a second, Grandmother Tanya, trying not to wake her husband, he was sleeping in the kitchen, took this rubbish out into the yard and, cursing her witch friend, set it on fire. Pillows burned badly. Again and again, Granny struck a match to revive the now and then dying fire. Literally the next day, Grandfather felt better, and after some time he completely recovered, and their relationship with their grandmother returned to its previous course. Lida disappeared after the exposure. According to rumors, now she lives in a remote village and does not talk to anyone. The sleepy cat is back. A terrible and strange moment in the life of our family is the first week after the euthanasia of the Chuchi cat. We always scolded her for taking towels off the radiators and playing with shoes, but at any opportunity, when we were not at home, Chucha chased a sneaker or boot and wore a towel on the floor. A few months ago, the cat became very ill. Nothing could save her, but every day brought such a terrible torment. Our family made the difficult decision to put down our beloved pet. Everything that even somehow reminded of a cat, we removed. The day passed in melancholy and sadness, but life always takes its toll, and little by little we returned to normal business. In the afternoon of the next day, our apartment was empty. I made an appointment with a friend, and my parents left for the theater, a visit to which was planned long before all this. I returned home around 21:30. Parents at that moment were still at the play. As soon as I crossed the threshold, I smelled a strong cat smell. It's strange, it seems that everything related to Chucha was removed, and in the daytime, in my opinion, it didn't smell like that. Turning on the light in the hallway, I saw my sneaker lying in the middle of the room. That's when goosebumps ran down my back, but immediately thinking that it was my parents, while getting dressed, accidentally kicked him. I calmed down a little and went to the kitchen to make myself some tea. Returning Mom and Dad denied their guilt in scattered shoes, and we just shrugged our shoulders in bewilderment. Frankly, it seemed to me that my parents thought that I was playing them. The next morning, I woke up from Chuchi's half-asleep mother's cry. I went out to see what happened and saw my mother picking up towels and shoes all over the apartment. I met her gaze and realized that the thought had just now dawned on her. Chucha we put to sleep the day before yesterday. Similar inexplicable things happened for about a week, but every day the consequences of the Chuchin games, no one doubted this, seemed to fade away. Either a towel, as if by chance, would move off the battery, or a lone shoe would crash from the shelf. A week later, mysticism completely disappeared. But for several months now, returning home, we have been running our eyes in all corners, examining for any oddities, and we are afraid to get a new pet. How do you like these stories? Did you like them? Then I wait for likes and comments. Thank you for watching.